Joining us now, Democratic strategist, CNN political commentator Paul Begala, and Maura Gillespie, founder and principal of BlueStack Strategies, former press advisor to then House Speaker John Boehner. Good to see you guys. Maura, let's talk about the FAA and what we were just hearing from Pete Muntean. And you heard from the head of that union representing, these are people who install and maintain air traffic control communications, the radio, the computer systems, which clearly are critical for keeping us safe in the skies. The DOGE effort clearly is not slowing down, but this becomes a political problem when? That's the question I think I've got this morning.
So I think, you've already seen, unfortunately, terrible accidents with, airplanes recently. I do think that public opinion is one of the biggest factors that Donald Trump, the President of the United States, cares about. And so if public opinion starts to show him that they are not happy with these decisions, that's when it'll be a problem for him if his approval ratings go down based on actions that his subordinate, Elon Musk, is taking. I do think that largely Americans find that the federal workforce does feel bloated to them. As someone who works in the federal government, I know it's not the most glamorous job. So this idea that we are somehow rolling in money and just enjoying the fruits of American taxpayers, labor is not the case. I do think it's really important for people to remember that as these cuts are being made. People choose to go work for the government. They choose to go work in these positions. It's not because it's glamorous. It's because it's work that they care about. And so to just make these blanket policies and making these rash decisions could really be not only problematic for our workforce and for the safety and security of our airways, but for just our governments and our people who are working there.
Well, and in the fact that it's, as it was described by this union leader, and these non-surgical firings when it comes to the safety of the flying skies has never been more important, as we know. Paul, I want to play, just as a reminder, what the Secretary of Transportation, Sean Duffy, said right after the DCA crash.
We're going to surge air traffic controllers. We're going to bring in the best and the brightest. That was the direction from President Trump. I can't flip a switch and make that happen overnight, but it's this process and this plan we're developing right now that's going to, a year, 2, 3 years from now, show real results of putting certified air traffic controllers, bright, smart, brilliant people in towers controlling airspace.
These newest firings that we're talking about, they do not include air traffic controllers. We know, though, the air traffic controllers are on short supply, but he's talking about the best and brightest in the next generation. That's exactly what that's getting fired as they're culling the workforce. Same question to you then. This all becomes a political problem with DOGE and the thinning out of the federal workforce. When?
Well, when you hear Pete Muntean say the rules of aviation safety are written in blood, oh my God, that's chilling. And it's true. Nobody wants more accidents, and Maura's right. That was a tragedy at DCA a few weeks ago. But people are going to see at the low end things like delays, things like missed flights. But it's just, I have to say, nobody voted for this. Nobody stood in line and said, gee, I want Donald Trump to fire the people who keep the skies safe. By the way, he just barely won. He didn't get a majority of the vote, so most Americans voted against Mr. Trump. He won by 1.5%. And he won to cut the cost of groceries, gas, and rent. Okay? I don't think firing a bunch of people who keep the skies safe is going to help anybody buy eggs. And that's his real problem, is that he's the master of distraction. And by the way, my Democrats fall for it every time. They should be the largemouth bass, not the donkey. And they chase every shiny object and bite on it, and then, whoa, there's a hook in there. Keep the main thing, Democrats. This guy got elected to cut the cost of groceries, gas, and rent. Why the heck isn't he doing it?
But Paul, then let me ask you, this kind of feeds into exactly what we're now, and you can tell me if you think this is real or just a real distraction from, but President Trump on Saturday threw something out there, and you get to decide, is this a head fake or not? That one sentence insight into kind of what appears to be his guiding principle or philosophy in the moves that he's made in the first weeks of his presidency, when he wrote, "He who saves his country does not violate any law." And he's now pinned this to the top of his social media profile. It's not something that is, it's not a missive that clearly he wants to go away or is going to get deleted anytime soon. What do you think of that then, Paul?
Well, it could have been written by the Supreme Court in that abominable ruling, which kind of repealed the Magna Carta from 1215, saying, well, he is above the law. I don't blame Mr. Trump for thinking he's above the law, because in some ways the Supreme Court did put him above the law. And then he's got this coterie around him, not coterie, this party Republican elites, not the walking around folks. A lot of really good people voted for Donald Trump, and they didn't vote for this. But it is you have to go to North Korea, really, to see this kind of devotion. Or, I guess, closer to home, I hope somebody, Kate, loves you as much as these Republicans in Congress worship Donald Trump. I mean, it's not just like a healthy, like a marriage, oh, I love my wife. It's like a 15-year-old boy, like face flushed, heart beating, palms sweaty, obsessively clicking on Rihanna videos. It's creepy. And that's kind of the cult that he has built among the Republicans in Washington. And the Republicans out in America, I don't think they share that at all.
Or what do you think? I mean, Republicans in Congress, they're the ones that they have already been dealing with kind of the fruits of this labor, if you will, of this phrase. But at some point, rubber must meet the road when they need to act and do and claim the authority that they were given, which is the power of the purse and creating law.
I do think that when it comes to the budget resolution, you're seeing that kind of play out where, of course, members of Congress are happy to cut the budget as long as it doesn't hurt their own constituents. They're happy to make cuts in places as long as it doesn't hurt programs that their constituents rely on, because at the end of the day, like, that's who they serve. And that's where you're going to see pushback. And there is already being conversations about Medicaid and the conversations about those cuts and how they're going to impact Donald Trump supporters, people who have pledged their loyalty, as Paul so eloquently discussed. But that's going to upset Donald Trump because he doesn't want to upset those voters. And again, as I mentioned before, public opinion is what matters most to him. So Republicans will push back on issues that matter to their constituents. And I think largely in the Senate, you'll see that retaining of the power and the separation of powers. The House does feel as though, in a large ways, they're waiting on the president to give them the go-ahead to do certain things. But by and large, it's the importance of the power of the purse, separation of powers. We all need to remember that.
Yeah, and it's a good point, though. While the administration may question polls or try to dismiss polls when they're not in their favor, you do know that is likely when you talk about a guiding principle, what Donald Trump will be tracking in terms of if he changes course on any of this stuff. It's good to see you both, though I'm still questioning if you can give eloquence to the eloquent moniker, though, Paul, to that. I'm kidding. I love you so much. I love you so much.
Kind, Kate. She's very kind. That's what I love.
Oh, got it. I need to learn that, too. Love you guys. Thank you so much. John.